The stars were burning. Captain Lisa Barnes stood on the bridge of her ship, looking at the reports on her screen. 3 more colonies had gone silent in the past week. No distress calls. No escape pods. No survivors. Just empty space where thousands of people used to live. "Captain," said Lieutenant Ryan Clark, walking up to her with a data pad in his hands. "We just lost contact with the mining station at Kepler 442b. They had over 3,000 people." There, Lisa felt her heart sink. The mining station was one of their biggest operations. Good people worked there. Families. Children. Now they were gone, just like all the others. "How long since their last transmission?" she asked. 6 hours ago. They were reporting normal operations. Everything was fine. Then nothing. Lisa looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, something was hunting them. Something that could wipe out entire colonies without leaving a trace. The other ships in the fleet called it different names. The Ghost Fleet, the Void Hunters, the Silence Bringers. But Lisa knew what they really were. She had seen the reports from the Outer Rim, the intercepted communications from alien species. That spoke in whispers about creatures that came from the dark between stars. They called them the Cathara. "Get me a connection to Earth Command," Lisa said. "Priority Alpha." The communication system crackled to life. Admiral Kate Sullivan's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired. They all looked tired these days. "Captain Barnes, I suppose you're calling about Kepler 442b. "Yes, ma'am. That's the 7th colony in 2 weeks. We need to know what we're dealing with." Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke in a low voice. "We know what we're dealing with, Captain. The question is whether we can do anything about it." She pressed a button on her desk. The screen changed to show a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of destroyed colonies. They formed a pattern, moving slowly toward Earth. "The Cathara have been moving through this sector for the past 3 months," Admiral Sullivan said. "They've destroyed 73 worlds so far, not just human colonies. Alien settlements too. Entire species wiped out." Lisa stared at the map. The red dots looked like drops of blood against the black of space. "What do we know about them?" "Not much. They're big. 8 feet tall, maybe more. They have claws that can cut through steel. Their skin is like armor. They can see in the dark, better than we can see in daylight. And they're smart. Very smart." The screen changed again. This time it showed pieces of wreckage floating in space. Twisted metal that used to be ships. Broken buildings that used to be homes. "This is what they leave behind," Admiral Sullivan said. "They don't just destroy things. They take them apart piece by piece. Like they're studying us." "Why?" Lisa asked. "What do they want?" "We don't know. Maybe they're looking for something. Maybe they just like to kill. All we know is that they're coming this way, and we're next." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She had fought pirates and rebels and alien raiders. But this was different. This was something that could destroy entire worlds. "What are our orders, Admiral?" "Evacuate as many colonies as you can. Fall back to the inner systems. We're setting up a defense line around Earth. And if that doesn't work..." Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Then we make them pay for every inch of space they take from us." The communication ended. Lisa stood alone on the bridge, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Cathara were coming. Ships filled with creatures that had never known defeat. Monsters that fed on fear and death. She thought about the people on Kepler 442b, the miners who worked hard every day to build a better life for their families, the children who played in the colony's parks, the teachers and doctors and engineers who had chosen to make their home among the stars. All gone now. All because something in the dark had decided they didn't deserve to live. "Captain," said Ryan Clark, "the crew is asking questions. They want to know what's happening." Lisa turned to face him. Ryan was young, maybe 25 years old. He had joined the fleet to see the galaxy and make a difference. Now he was asking her to explain why the galaxy was trying to kill them all. "Tell them the truth," she said. "Tell them we're facing something that's never been defeated. Something that thinks we're just animals to be hunted." "And what else should I tell them?" Lisa looked out at the stars one more time. Then she smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that came before a fight. "Tell them that the Kythera have never met humans before. They think we're just another species to be destroyed. They don't know that humans have been fighting and surviving for thousands of years. They don't know that we've faced extinction before and always found a way to keep going." She walked to the communication console and opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Captain Barnes to all ships. By now you've all heard the reports. The Kythera are coming. They've destroyed dozens of worlds. They think they're the perfect predators." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But they've made one mistake. They think we're prey. They think we'll run and hide and beg for mercy like all the others. They're wrong. We're humans. We don't run. We don't hide. And we sure as hell don't beg." The communication system crackled with responses from the other ships. Voices of men and women who had heard the same reports she had. People who knew they were facing something that could destroy them all. But they weren't afraid. They were angry. "All ships, prepare for jump to hyperspace. We're going to Kepler 442b. We're going to see what these Kythera left behind. And we're going to make sure they know that humans are coming for them." The stars began to shift as the ships entered hyperspace. Lisa Barnes stood on the bridge of her ship, leading her people toward the unknown, toward creatures that had never known defeat. But the Kythera had never fought humans before, and humans had something that no other species in the galaxy seemed to have. They had hope, and they had each other. And sometimes that was enough to change everything. The Kythera fleet moved through space like a dark storm. 40 ships, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their black hulls seemed to eat the light from nearby stars. On the command ship, Warlord Ziktar stood 8 feet tall, his armored skin gleaming under the red lights of the bridge. He was perfect. Evolution had made him perfect. His claws could cut through metal like paper. His eyes could see across many different types of light. His mind could process battle information faster than any computer. In 300 years of life, he had never lost a fight. The Kythera had been moving through the galaxy for centuries, destroying every species they found. It was natural. It was right. The strong consumed the weak. That was the way of the universe. "Warlord," said one of his warriors, "we are approaching the human colony called New Austin. Shall we begin the usual procedure?" Ziktar nodded. The usual procedure was simple. Send a message telling the prey to surrender. Wait for them to beg and cry, then destroy them quickly if they gave up, or slowly if they tried to fight. "Send the message," he said. The communication went out across space to the human colony. It was the same message they had sent to 73 other worlds. "This is the Kythera fleet. You have been chosen for consumption. Surrender now, and your death will be swift. Resist, and you will suffer before you die. You have 1 hour to decide." Then they waited. The waiting was always the same. First came silence, as the prey tried to understand what was happening. Then came the desperate messages. "Please don't hurt us. We have children. We'll give you anything you want. Please let us live." But this time was different. The response came from Commander Jake Morrison, the leader of the Human Defense Force. His voice was calm and steady. "This is humanity. We don't surrender. "Come and take it." Zektar stared at the communication console. In 300 years, no one had ever responded like that. The prey always begged. They always tried to bargain. They never challenged the Cathara to come and fight. "Repeat the message," he ordered. But the humans sent the same response. "This is humanity. We don't surrender. Come and take it." Zektar felt something he had never felt before. Confusion. These humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be afraid. All prey was afraid of the Cathara. "Begin the attack," he said. The Cathara fleet moved toward New Austin. The human colony had only 12 ships to defend it. Small ships, weak ships. Captain Helen Ross commanded the human defense. Fleet from her ship, the Liberty. She looked at the massive alien fleet approaching and knew her people were going to die. But she also knew they were going to make the aliens pay for it. "All ships, this is Captain Ross. They want to fight. Let's give them one they'll never forget." The battle began with the humans doing something the Cathara had never seen before. Instead of trying to run or hide, the human ships flew straight at the alien fleet. They were smaller and weaker, but they attacked like wild animals. The first human ship to reach the Cathara fleet was the Defiance, commanded by Captain Tony Garcia. His ship was damaged and losing air, but he kept flying straight at the largest alien ship. "Garcia, pull back." Captain Ross shouted over the radio. "Your ship is dying." "So am I," Garcia replied. "But I'm taking some of them with me." The Defiance smashed into the side of a Cathara cruiser. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire and metal. The aliens had never seen anything like it. The humans were using their own ships as weapons. Zektar watched from his command ship as more human vessels rammed into his fleet. These creatures were destroying themselves to hurt him. It made no sense. The weak were supposed to try to save themselves, not throw their lives away. "Send boarding parties to the human ships," he ordered. "I want to see these creatures face to face." Cathara warriors launched from their ships toward the damaged human vessels. They expected to find the usual things. Creatures hiding in corners, begging for mercy, offering to serve their new masters. Drakmar was the first Cathara warrior to board a human ship. He was 7 feet tall and had fought in 100 battles. His claws had torn apart countless enemies. He expected the humans to run when they saw him. Instead, he found Sergeant Tony Garcia and his Marines waiting for him. The humans had barricaded themselves in the ship's main corridor. They had weapons ready, and they were not afraid. "Come on, then," Garcia said, raising his rifle. "Let's see what you've got." The fight that followed was unlike anything Drakmar had ever experienced. The humans fought with a fury that matched the Cathara's own savage nature. But there was something else. Something that made no sense. When one human was wounded, the others would risk their lives to protect him. When they ran out of ammunition, they used their guns as clubs. When their weapons broke, they used their bare hands and teeth. Garcia himself was shot 3 times, but kept fighting. When his rifle was destroyed, he pulled out a knife. When the knife broke, he used his fists. Even when Drakmar's claws tore through his chest, Garcia grabbed the alien warrior and tried to choke him with his dying breath. Drakmar had never fought anything like this. These humans were not just brave. They were insane. They fought like they did not care if they lived or died, as long as they could hurt their enemies. Back on the command ship, Zektar received reports from his warriors. They were winning, but not easily. The humans were making them pay for every inch of their ships. Every room was a battle. Every corridor was a war. "Warlord," said one of his officers, "we are taking heavy losses. Perhaps we should withdraw and use our long-range weapons." Zektar's eyes blazed with anger. "Withdraw? We are Cathara. We do not withdraw from prey." But even as he said it, he knew something was wrong. His warriors were reporting things that should not be possible. Humans who kept fighting even when they were dying. Humans who used their own bodies as weapons. Humans who showed no fear of death. The battle lasted for 6 hours. When it ended, the Cathara had won. But it was not the kind of victory they were used to. They had lost 12 ships. Hundreds of warriors were dead or wounded. And the humans had never asked for mercy. Captain Helen Ross died on the bridge of her ship, still firing at the enemy, even as the Liberty broke apart around her. Commander Jake Morrison's last message was broadcast across the galaxy. We are humans. We do not surrender. Remember that. Zektar stood on his command ship, looking at the wreckage of the battle. He had won, but he did not feel like a winner. These humans had done something impossible. They had made the Cathara retreat, not a full retreat. But his fleet had pulled back to a safe distance after the boarding actions. His warriors had requested support. The mighty Cathara, who had never known defeat, had been forced to ask for help against a few hundred humans. Warlord, said his communications officer, we are receiving messages from across the galaxy. Word of the battle is spreading. Zektar listened to the intercepted communications. Species that the Cathara had conquered were whispering to each other. The humans had made the great predators bleed. The humans had made them retreat. For the first time in his long life, Zektar felt something new, something he did not understand. It was a cold feeling in his chest, a voice in his mind that whispered of danger. He did not know the word for it. The Cathara had no word for it, because they had never needed one. The feeling was fear. Set course for the next human colony. He ordered, we will show the galaxy that the Cathara do not fear prey. But as his fleet moved through space, Zektar could not stop thinking about the humans. They had fought like Cathara. No, they had fought like something even more dangerous than Cathara. They had fought like creatures who had nothing left to lose. And somewhere in the darkness of space, more human ships were moving. They had heard Commander Morrison's message. They had seen the reports of the battle. The humans were coming. And they were angry. News of the battle at New Austin spread across human space faster than light. In every colony, on every ship, people heard the same message. Humanity had made the Cathara bleed. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the war room on Earth, surrounded by her best officers. The holographic display showed the galaxy, with red markers showing Cathara positions and blue markers showing human forces. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, for the first time in their history, the Cathara have been hurt. They're not invincible. They can be fought. They can be defeated. Around the table, military leaders from across human space nodded grimly. These were people who had spent their careers preparing for wars that might never come. Now the biggest war in human history was about to begin. Dr. Ben Taylor has been working on new weapons, Admiral Sullivan continued. Show them what you've got, Doctor. A thin man with gray hair stepped forward. Dr. Taylor had been designing weapons for the military for 20 years. He had never had to design weapons to fight 8-foot-tall armored aliens before. We've been studying the wreckage from New Austin. He said, the Cathara have tough skin, but it's not perfect. Their armor is strong against energy weapons, but it can be broken with the right kind of explosive. And they're big. That makes them easy targets if you can get close enough. He activated a holographic display showing new rifle designs. These are armor-piercing rounds designed specifically for Cathara physiology. They'll punch through their carapace. And these, he showed a different weapon, are plasma grenades. They burn hot enough to melt their armor. Colonel Matt Rodriguez leaned forward. He was a special operations commander who had been fighting pirates and rebels for 15 years. What about their ships? Their technology is more advanced than ours, Dr. Taylor admitted. But they're designed for fighting species that use conventional tactics. They're not prepared for the kind of warfare humans specialize in. What kind of warfare is that? Asked Captain Nicole Adams. Admiral Sullivan smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. The kind where you hit the enemy where they don't expect it. Take what you need and disappear before they can fight back. Guerrilla warfare. We've been doing it for thousands of years. The plan was simple and brutal. While the Kithara focused on attacking human colonies, small human forces would strike at their supply lines. Every alien outpost would become a target. Every Kithara ship traveling alone would be hunted. Colonel Rodriguez took the first mission. His ship, the Ranger, was fast and lightly armed, perfect for hit-and-run attacks. He led a force of 50 Marines to a Kithara supply depot on the edge of their territory. The aliens had never been attacked before. They had no guards posted, no defensive systems running. They thought they were safe because they were Kithara, and everyone in the galaxy feared the Kithara. Rodriguez and his Marines landed on the depot during the night cycle. They moved through the facility like ghosts, planting explosives and gathering intelligence. When they were done, they disappeared back into space. The depot exploded 12 hours later. 20 Kithara warriors died in the blast. But more importantly, the explosion destroyed supplies meant for 6 different fleets. Weapons, food, fuel, all gone. When Warlord Zeektar heard about the attack, he could not believe it. They attacked a supply depot? How did they even find it? His intelligence officer, a creature called Vex High, studied the reports. The humans appear to have advanced reconnaissance capabilities, Warlord. They knew exactly where to strike for maximum damage. Send a patrol fleet to hunt them down. But the humans were already gone. They had struck like lightning and vanished like smoke. This was not how wars were supposed to be fought. Armies were supposed to meet in open battle. The strong were supposed to crush the weak in direct combat. The humans were changing the rules. Captain Nicole Adams led the next attack. Her ship, the Endeavor, intercepted a Kithara transport carrying prisoners from a destroyed alien world. The transport was lightly defended because no one had ever attacked Kithara prisoner ships before. Adams and her crew disabled the transport's engines with precise shots. Then they boarded the ship and found something that made them all angry. The Kithara had packed thousands of alien prisoners into cargo holds like animals. Men, women, children from a dozen different species, all crammed together without food or water. Get them to the escape pods, Adams ordered her Marines. All of them. The rescue took 4 hours. Adams's crew worked frantically to get the prisoners to safety while keeping watch for Kithara reinforcements. They saved over 3,000 alien civilians that day, but they also discovered something important. In the transport's computer systems, they found detailed maps of Kithara territory, locations of bases, patrol routes, supply schedules, information that would help human forces strike where the aliens were weakest. The war was changing. For centuries, the Kithara had been the hunters, and everyone else had been prey. Now they found themselves looking over their shoulders, wondering when the next attack would come. Vex High brought increasingly disturbing reports to Warlord Zeektar. Warlord, we have lost 6 supply convoys this month. Our forward bases are requesting additional security. The warrior clans are asking why we cannot protect our own territory. Zektar's claws scraped against the metal of his command chair. How many humans are we fighting? Our estimates suggest no more than 10,000 warriors spread across there. Entire fleet? 10,000? Zektar's voice was filled with disbelief. We have lost more ships to 10,000 humans than we lost conquering the Valdari Empire? The Valdari had been a spacefaring civilization with millions of soldiers and hundreds of worlds. The Kithara had crushed them in a war that lasted 3 years. But these humans with their tiny fleets and primitive weapons, were proving to be a much more dangerous enemy. The reason was simple. The Valdari had fought like civilized beings. They had fleets and armies and established battle lines. They had rules of engagement and codes of honor. The humans had none of those things. They attacked without warning. They used captured alien technology against its creators. They rescued prisoners and turned them into intelligence sources. They fought like they had been born in war and raised on conflict. And they were getting stronger. Dr. Amy Foster, a human scientist, had been studying captured Kithara technology. She discovered that the aliens' advanced weapons relied on a specific type of power cell. The cells were manufactured on only 3 worlds in Kithara space. If we can destroy those manufacturing plants, she told Admiral Sullivan, we can cripple their entire fleet. The mission required coordination between multiple human forces. Captain Lisa Barnes would lead a diversionary attack on a Kithara fortress. While the aliens were distracted, Colonel Rodriguez would take his special operations team to destroy the power cell factories. The plan worked perfectly. The Kithara threw everything they had at Barnes's fleet, trying to protect their fortress. Meanwhile, Rodriguez and his Marines slipped past their defenses and destroyed all 3 manufacturing plants. Within weeks, Kithara ships across the galaxy began losing power. Their weapons stopped working. Their shields failed. Some ships were stranded in space, helpless. For the first time in their history, the Kithara began to retreat. Not from a single battle, but from entire star systems. They pulled their fleets back to defend their core worlds, abandoning territories they had held for decades. The other species in the galaxy watched in amazement. The great predators were running away. The unstoppable Kithara were afraid, but Warlord Ziktar was not ready to give up. He gathered the largest fleet in Kithara history, over 200 ships, carrying 50,000 of their finest warriors. If the humans wanted a war, he would give them a war that would end their species forever. He set course for Earth. The humans were waiting for him. Admiral Sullivan had brought together every ship humanity could field. The fleet was smaller than the Kithara force, but the humans had advantages their enemies did not understand. They had learned to work together. They had learned to adapt. And they had learned that sometimes the best way to win a war was not to fight it the way your enemy expected. As the 2 fleets moved toward their final confrontation, something else was happening across the galaxy. The species that the Kithara had conquered were rising up. They had seen that the great predators could be defeated. They had learned that fear was not forever. The galaxy was changing. And it was all because a few thousand humans had looked at the most dangerous predators in the universe and said, we don't surrender. The final battle was coming. But win or lose, humanity had already achieved something remarkable. They had shown the galaxy that no enemy was unbeatable. No tyrant was unstoppable. They had given the universe something it had almost forgotten how to feel: hope. The Kithara fleet arrived at Earth like a dark tide. 200 ships filled with the galaxy's most perfect predators, led by Warlord Ziktar's burning desire for revenge. He had never lost a war before. He would not lose this one. Today, we end this, he told his warriors over the communication system. Today, we show the galaxy what happens to prey that dares to bite back. But as his fleet approached Earth's defensive line, Ziktar saw something that confused him. The human ships were not arranged in the standard battle formation. Instead of trying to protect their home world, they had spread out across a wide area. Some ships were hiding behind asteroids. Others were powered down, drifting like space debris. What are they doing? He asked Vexhai. His intelligence officer studied the tactical display. It appears they are trying to make us think there are fewer ships than we detected. Fools. Do they think we cannot count? The battle began with the Kithara doing what they had always done. They flew straight at their enemies in a massive formation, using their superior firepower to crush everything in their path. It had worked against every species they had ever fought. It did not work against the humans. As soon as the Kithara fleet committed to their attack, the debris around Earth came to life. Hidden human ships powered up their weapons and struck at the aliens from unexpected angles. Ships that had been hiding behind asteroids emerged to attack the Kithara flanks. General Paul Stone commanded Earth's defenses from the orbital station above the planet. He watched as his carefully planned ambush unfolded exactly as designed. All units, this is Stone. Execute Plan Delta. Hit them hard and keep moving. Don't let them pin you down. The human ships moved like a pack of wolves, attacking in coordinated groups before disappearing back into the void. They did not try to match the Kithara's firepower. Instead, they used speed and cunning to strike where the aliens were weakest. Captain Lisa Barnes led one of the attack groups. Her ship, the Defiant, had been upgraded with the best weapons Dr. Taylor could design. She and her crew struck at a Kithara cruiser, crippling its engines before vanishing behind a moon. "This is Barnes to all units," she broadcast. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy their entire fleet. We just need to hurt them enough to make them think twice about coming back." But Warlord Zettar was not thinking about retreating. He was thinking about the humans he was going to kill. His pride had been wounded by these inferior creatures. He would not rest until every human in the galaxy was dead. "Send boarding parties to their largest ships," he ordered. "I want to see these humans die with my own eyes." The boarding actions began across the battlefield. Kithara warriors, the finest killers evolution had ever produced, launched themselves at human vessels. They expected the same kind of fights they had encountered at New Austin, fierce but brief, ending with human defeat. Instead, they found something that changed everything they thought they knew about warfare. Drakmer led a boarding party onto the human battleship Liberty. He expected to fight through the ship's corridors, killing humans room by room until they reached the bridge. What he found instead was Sergeant Maria Santos and her squad of Marines. Santos was 24 years old and weighed maybe 120 pounds. She should have been terrified of 8-foot-tall armored aliens with razor-sharp claws. Instead, she was angry. "You picked the wrong ship," she told Drakmer as he entered the main corridor. The fight that followed was unlike anything in Drakmer's experience. The humans had turned their own ship into a weapon against the boarders. They had rigged explosives in the walls. They had created choke points where the alien size worked against them. They had prepared for this battle in ways that made no evolutionary sense. Santos herself had been shot twice, but she kept fighting. When her rifle ran out of ammunition, she used a pistol. When the pistol was empty, she used a knife. When the knife broke, she used a piece of broken metal from the ship's hull. But the strangest thing was not how fiercely she fought. It was why she fought. Drakmer cornered her in a damaged section of the ship. She was bleeding from multiple wounds and could barely stand. Any reasonable creature would have surrendered or tried to escape. Instead, Santos placed herself between Drakmer and a sealed door. "What are you protecting?" Drakmer asked, genuinely curious. "The children," Santos replied. "There are 30 kids from the colony ships behind that door. You want to get to them. You go through me." Drakmer stared at her. This made no sense at all. Santos was not related to these children. They were not even from her ship. By every law of evolution, she should have saved herself and let the weak die. But she did not move. Even dying, even facing certain death, she stood between a predator and its prey. "You would die for creatures that are not your offspring?" Drakmer asked. "I would die for any child," Santos replied. "That's what humans do." The fight ended with Santos's death, but she held the corridor long enough for reinforcements to arrive. The children were saved. And Drakmar was left with questions that had no answers in Kithara. Philosophy. Similar scenes played out across the battlefield. Human soldiers threw themselves into impossible situations to save their comrades. Pilots flew their damaged ships into enemy formations to protect evacuation vessels. Engineers stayed at their posts to keep life support running, even as their ships fell apart around them. Dr. Carol Jenkins, working with a team of rescued alien scientists, made a discovery that explained everything. She had been studying human DNA and comparing it to other species in the galaxy. "Admiral," she said, calling Admiral Sullivan from her laboratory, "I know why the humans fight the way they do." "Explain." "Every other species we've encountered evolved as either predators or prey. The Kithara are apex predators, perfect individual killers. Most other species are prey animals that rely on hiding or running away. And humans? Humans are pack hunters. We evolved to work together to bring down prey much larger and stronger than ourselves. But we're also persistence hunters. We never give up, ever. Our ancestors would chase animals for days until they collapsed from exhaustion." Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a moment. "You're saying we're wired differently?" "Exactly. The Kithara expect us to act like prey, because that's what every other species does when faced with a superior predator. But we're not prey. We're hunters who learn to work together. And we never stop." On his command ship, Warlord Zektar was receiving reports that made no sense. His warriors were winning most of their individual battles, but the humans kept coming. Every ship they destroyed was replaced by 2 more. Every human they killed seemed to inspire 10 others to fight harder. "Warlord," said Vexhai, "perhaps we should consider a strategic withdrawal. We can regroup and attack again with fresh forces." Zektar's claws scraped against his command chair. Withdraw? From prey? But even as he said it, he knew something fundamental had changed. These humans were not prey. They were something else entirely. Something the Kithara had never encountered. Before, the battle raged for 18 hours. When it ended, both sides had taken terrible losses. The Kithara had lost over 60 ships. The humans had lost almost their entire defense fleet, but the humans had accomplished something impossible. They had forced the greatest predators in the galaxy to retreat from their homeworld as the surviving Kithara ships limped away from Earth. Zektar found himself face to face with Captain Lisa Barnes. Her ship had been damaged in the final assault, and she had been captured during a boarding action. Zektar expected her to beg for her life, like all prey did when faced with death. Instead, she looked him in the eyes and smiled. "You're wondering what makes us different," she said. "You fight like Kithara," Zektar admitted. "But you are not predators. I do not understand." "No, you don't. You think strength comes from being the perfect killer. But you're wrong. Real strength comes from being willing to die for something bigger than yourself." Zektar stared at her. "You make no evolutionary sense." "Maybe not. But we're still here, and you're running away." Barnes died a few minutes later, executed by Zektar's claws. But her words stayed with him as his fleet retreated into the darkness of space. For the first time in his long life, Warlord Zektar began to wonder if the Kithara had made a mistake. They had thought they were fighting another species. But humans were not just another species. They were something new, something that had never existed in the galaxy before. They were predators who protected the weak, hunters who cared more about their pack than their own lives, warriors who became stronger when they were hurt instead of weaker. And there were billions of them, spread across hundreds of worlds, all united by the same impossible instinct to never give up. The Kithara had awakened something they did not understand, and that something was coming for them. 3 years after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy was a different place. The Kithara Empire was crumbling. World after world declared independence as news spread that the great predators could be defeated. Species that had lived in fear for centuries suddenly found the courage to fight back. On the former Cathara fortress world of Nexus Prime, Ambassador Lavra Kim stood before a gathering of representatives from 40 different species. The room buzzed with nervous energy as creatures who had been enemies just months before tried to work together. "We're here to build something new," Lavra said, looking around the room at faces both familiar and alien. "Not another empire. Not another system where the strong rule the weak. Something better." A tall, blue-skinned Valdari named Kessin stood up. His people had been conquered by the Cathara 50 years ago. "You speak of peace, human. But how do we know you will not become the new predators? You defeated the Cathara. You have the strongest fleet in the galaxy." Lavra smiled. It was a question she had been expecting. "Because that's not who we are. We didn't fight the Cathara to conquer the galaxy. We fought them to stop the conquering." She activated a holographic display showing the current state of human space. "Look at our territory. We've had 3 years to expand, to take over former Cathara worlds. Instead, we've been helping other species rebuild. We've been sharing our technology. We've been giving away our advantages." It was true. Instead of building an empire, humanity had spent the years after their victory doing something unprecedented in galactic history. They had been making friends. Dr. Amy Foster, now Director of Interspecies Relations, stepped forward. "We've learned something important about the galaxy. It's big enough for all of us. There's no need to fight over resources when there are billions of star systems out there." But not everyone was convinced. A reptilian Skorathi hissed from across the room. The Cathara said the same thing at first. They spoke of bringing order to the galaxy. Then they began eating worlds. "The difference," said Admiral Ryan Clark, who had been promoted after the war, "is that humans evolved as pack hunters. We're stronger when we work together. The Cathara evolved as solitary predators. They were only comfortable when they were in control." The meeting went on for hours. Slowly, carefully, representatives began to trust each other. Species that had been enemies for generations started talking about trade, agreements, and mutual defense pacts. But the most important moment came when the doors opened and a figure walked in that made everyone in the room freeze. It was Vex High, former intelligence officer of the Cathara fleet. He stood 7 feet tall, his armored carapace scarred from countless battles. Behind him walked 12 other Cathara warriors. "You told us that any species could join this alliance," Vex High said, his voice like gravel. "Does that include former enemies?" Lavra Kim looked at the assembled representatives. She could see fear in their eyes. These creatures had nightmares about the Cathara. Some of them had lost entire families to these warriors. "It includes anyone who wants to build instead of destroy," she said finally. "But we need to know why you're here." Vex High was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words shocked everyone in the room. "Because you taught us something we did not know before. You showed us that there is another way to live." He gestured to the warriors behind him. "We are the survivors of Warlord Zektar's final fleet. After the Battle of Earth, we retreated to the edge of space. We expected to regroup and attack again." "What changed?" asked Dr. Foster. "We rescued a damaged human ship. Inside were wounded soldiers and civilians from a colony evacuation. By our laws, we should have killed them or left them to die." Vex High paused, struggling with words that did not exist in the Cathara language. "But we remembered what we had seen in battle. Humans dying to protect others. Humans fighting not for conquest, but for survival. So we them." The room was completely silent. The idea of Cathara helping anyone was almost impossible to believe. "The humans we rescued, did not try to escape. They did not try to kill us. They thanked us. They asked about our wounded. They offered to share their medical supplies. Vexai's voice was filled with wonder. They treated us like allies. One of the other Cathara stepped forward. I am Kekstar, former assault commander. The humans taught us words we had never learned. Mercy, compassion, friendship. We wish to learn more. Lavra Kim felt tears in her eyes. This was what humanity had been fighting for. Not victory over their enemies, but the chance to turn enemies into friends. The alliance is open to all who want peace, she said. But you have to understand, many species here have lost loved ones to the Cathara. Building trust will take time. We have time, Vexai replied, and we have much to make up for. The next few hours were tense, but something remarkable happened. Species that had suffered under Cathara rule began to talk to their former oppressors. Not as friends, not yet, but as beings trying to understand each other. A young Valdori engineer named Senna approached Kekstar. My father died in your attack on Valdara 3, she said. Kekstar bowed his head. I remember that battle. I led the assault on the eastern settlements. I am sorry for your loss. I hated your people for 20 years, Senna continued. But the humans taught me something. They said that hate only creates more hate. If we want a better galaxy, we have to choose forgiveness. She extended her hand to the massive alien warrior. I'm willing to try if you are. Kekstar stared at her hand for a long moment. Then carefully, he reached out with one clawed finger and touched her palm. It was the first peaceful contact between their species in 50 years. 6 months later, Admiral Ryan Clark stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense ship Unity, watching construction crews work on a massive space station. The station was being built by engineers from 20 different species, using technology shared freely between former enemies. Admiral, said Captain Steve Johnson, his communications officer, we're receiving a message from the Frontier Expedition. The Frontier Expedition was humanity's newest project. Instead of building weapons or conquering territory, they were sending mixed species crews to explore the unknown regions of the galaxy, looking for new worlds, new life, new possibilities for cooperation. Put it through, Clark said. The face of Captain Maria Santos appeared on the screen. She was the daughter of Sergeant Maria Santos, who had died defending children during the Battle of Earth. Like her mother, she had chosen to dedicate her life to protecting others. Admiral, you're not going to believe what we found out here, she said, excitement clear in her voice. The image changed to show a blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. It's perfect for colonization. Breathable atmosphere, fresh water, fertile soil. Enough room for millions of people. Any intelligent life? Clark asked. None that we can detect. But here's the interesting part. We're not claiming it for humanity. The crew voted, and we want to make it a shared world. Open to any species that wants to start over. Clark smiled. That was so perfectly human. Finding a paradise world and deciding to give it away. Approved, Captain. What are you going to call it? New Hope, Santos replied. Because that's what it represents. A place where any species can go to build a better life. As the communication ended, Clark thought about how much had changed. 5 years ago, the galaxy had been ruled by fear. Predators like the Cathara had hunted weaker species like animals. Everyone lived in terror of the next attack. Now former enemies were working together to build something unprecedented. A galactic civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest. Trade instead of theft. Hope instead of fear. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still species they preferred. Isolation or aggression. But for the first time in galactic history, there was an alternative to the rule of the strong over the weak. And it had all started because a few 1,000 humans had looked at the most dangerous predators in the universe and refused to surrender. Captain Tony Garcia, grandson of the Marine who had died fighting the Cathara, walked through the corridors of the Unity. His security patrol included humans, Valdari, Scoruffy, and even 2 former Cathara warriors. They called themselves the Peacekeepers. Now, not because they enforced peace through violence, but because they chose peace over violence whenever possible. "Sir," said Private Lisa Chun, a young human Marine, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had surrendered to the Cathara?" Garcia looked out a viewport at the space station under construction. Ships from dozens of species worked together, sharing resources and knowledge. "I think the galaxy would have become a very dark place," he said. "Sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to give up, even when it seems hopeless, even when everyone tells you it's impossible. Is that what makes humans special?" asked Kextar, the former Cathara assault commander who now served as Garcia's second-in-command. Garcia shook his head. "What makes humans special is that we're not special. We're just stubborn enough to keep trying when everyone else quits. And we're crazy enough to believe that former enemies can become friends." He gestured to the mixed species crew around him. "Look around. 5 years ago, this would have been impossible. Now it's normal. That's not because humans are superior to anyone else. It's because we refuse to accept that things have to stay the way they are.